Okay, so welcome everyone to today's session. I'm so happy that folks were able to join us. Sorry, my screen is freezing. There we go. I'm so happy that folks were able to join us today. Welcome. Like I said, my name is Timbit Iyasu, and I lead TSLIP's Employment Working Group. We're here today to expand our understanding of AI and its use in service delivery. Today's session is titled Navigating AI, Exploring Fundamentals and Application in Service Delivery. So I'll first start off by reading our land acknowledgement. Just bear with me while I share my screen again. Okay. So I'd like to start by honoring the land that we are on, which has been the site of human activity since time immemorial. It is the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nations, on which I recognize that I am an uninvited guest. Ontario is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements and is home to many Indigenous nations from across Turtle Island, including the Inuit and the Métis. These treaties and other agreements, including the One Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and its resources. Other Indigenous nations, Europeans, and newcomers were invited into this covenant in the spirit of respect, peace, and friendship. We are all treaty people. Many of us have come here as settlers, immigrants, newcomers in this generation or generations past. We are mindful of broken covenants, and we strive to make this right with the land and with each other. I would also like to acknowledge those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, and so I honor and pay tribute to the ancestors of African origin and descent. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into it. So this is our agenda for today. While it does seem like a very short agenda, it is going to be a packed discussion. We just did our welcome. I did the land acknowledgement. I'll do a brief overview of the session, and then we'll get into understanding AI basics, and then we'll move into AI in service delivery. And then last but not least, we'll have our Q&A portion. And for this, we've left a considerable amount of time, about half an hour of this session, to allow folks enough time or ample time to ask questions, seek clarification, and even if you want, you can share some of your own experiences. We do have the Q&A feature enabled. So if you have any questions during the presentations or even during the Q&A portion, please feel free to use that feature there, and then we'll read your questions. So today's session, as I said, I'll be providing a brief overview. Okay, I decided not to share my screen so we can all see each other. But like I said, today's session, so it's TSLIP's Employment Working Group has organized this discussion today, and it's focused on AI literacy for service providers in the newcomer serving sector. It aims to provide insights into the fundamentals of AI and its impact on employment services and beyond that within the sector. So today I'm excited to have experts from ACCESS Employment as well as Hispanotech join us for an in-depth discussion on AI literacy. Given that many organizations and folks in our sector are still in the early stages of understanding AI and incorporating it into their work, we thought that this session would be particularly relevant at this time. So the session itself will look at key areas essential for building AI literacy, which will include understanding AI basics, exploring its application in service delivery, and navigating ethical and privacy considerations in AI use. So I'd like to introduce our two speakers for today. So we have Carlos Paz-Soldan, who is the president of Hispanotech, and Aimee Holmes, who is the VP of Data Strategy and Digital Solutions at ACCESS Employment. Carlos will guide us through the foundational concepts of AI, providing us some knowledge to gain a better understanding of it, and he'll dive into the essentials of AI and its opportunities to be useful in the work that we do in supporting newcomers. Aimee will then introduce us to the innovative chatbot Vera that ACCESS Employment has created, and she'll showcase its practical applications in employment services, and we'll learn a bit more about its implementation and how it's impacted service delivery. So before we get into the actual discussion and the presentations, we do have polls for the audience. We'll be launching a poll for the audience, and we're hoping to get a better understanding of where folks are at with their understanding of AI. So you should be seeing that shortly. Oh, okay. See, the poll isn't showing up on my end. Nadia, if I can ask you a favor, are you able to launch the poll on your end?
Sure, let's see.
Sorry about that, folks.
Can everyone see it now?
Yes, we can see it.
You can see it? Okay, great.
Perfect. So that poll there has 2 questions, and as I said, it's to get a better understanding. So we'll give folks 2 minutes to complete that poll. And then after the poll is completed, Nadia, if you can share the results. Or we can do 1 minute. It's a 2-question poll, so it shouldn't take too long.
I'll end it to me.
Yep, that would be great if you can.
Results?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry, can you see it? It says I'm sharing them. Are you able to see them?
Because I'm a host, it's not showing me, but are folks able to see the
Yes.
results there? Yes? Okay, lovely. Okay. Okay, great. So hopefully those results will give us more insights in terms of where folks are at. So thank you everybody for participating in that poll. I will now pass it to Carlos to provide us some insights into the fundamentals of AI. Thank you so much, Carlos.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. So you can see my screen now?
Yes,
Okay,
we can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. I have about 25 minutes for this, and I have material for 4 hours. So I'm probably going to be moving quite a bit faster, but you will be getting the slides, and you'll find that in the slides there are a lot of links that you can follow on your own time as well. But and we will have a Q&A session after the second presentation, so you can start collecting your questions and posting them in there. So let's get going on this. So this is the agenda, as was mentioned by Timbit. This is just for a quick way of introduction and for positioning. I am originally from Peru, as you can see from my background. I have an industrial systems engineering degree from Peru and an MBA from Rodman's. I am the president of Hispanotech. That's an association of Latin American professionals with about 1,800 members in Canada. And that is my volunteer, or one of my volunteer positions. In my day job, I'm also the president of Techmian Corp, which is a Microsoft partner. And I only mention that because a lot of what I may refer to may be OpenAI and Microsoft, but keep in mind that there are a lot of alternatives as well. And you know, I can touch on some of those if you want. The slide that the poll that we went through, there is, in this slide deck, at the bottom, there is an article in LinkedIn where we explain what each of these positions with regards to AI are. And what we're trying to do in a way is to try to position everybody towards the learning and experimenting step or stage, and then at some point start moving towards pragmatic and adopter. We don't want people to be too much in the concerned area. There are things to be concerned about, but there are things that you can do about as well. So that is it was interesting to see the results in the poll, and we'll try to answer some of those concerns as well. So as far as a perspective of artificial intelligence, number one is it doesn't mean that the computers are intelligent or they have become intelligent. It just means that computers are able to do some of the things that typically we thought only humans could do. They don't necessarily do them as well. Sometimes they do it a bit better, but in general, it is just pretending or trying to do what humans do naturally. So that's something to keep in mind as you start interacting, especially with generative AI. You get the sense that there is intelligence on the other side. There isn't. So don't be fooled by by the appearance of intelligence. To put it in perspective, the artificial intelligence, everybody started hearing about it in November 2022 when ChatGPT was launched. But in fact, it has been around for the last 70 years, and in fact, even longer than that, since 1763, if you want to bring it back to the original statistical advancements that generated the whole discussion about AI. Probably a lot of you have already worked with things like the least squares system or way of predicting. That's been around since 1805. It is one of those things that basically, if we have information such as how many ice creams have been sold in a particular day and what was the temperature of that day, we can do an approximation, in this case, by calculating the least squares to this line. And then this way we can say, okay, when it's 32 degrees, most likely we're going to sell 62 ice creams. That's one of the fundamentals. So you can see it's not necessarily intelligent, but this is actually considered artificial intelligence, because when the computers are given this line, they're able to predict or infer what the sales will be as well. So moving a bit further, there have been a lot of technological advancements in history, in human history, starting from the wheel and fire and so on. Each of these have tended to create disruptions, opportunities, and challenges. So whether it was the invention of the printing press or steam power, there have been moments in history when things change substantially. In our lifetimes, depending on your lifetime, but let's say on mine, there has been the appearance of the birth of the personal computers, the internet, mobile technology, and most recently artificial intelligence. So this is one of those moments when our foundational technology is changing. And again, it is something that we need to deal with. You may have seen this chart, the hype cycle. No, it's a Gartner chart. There is no need to rush to make predictions or to make assumptions. The best thing to do now is to patiently make informed decisions, not reject change, but embrace it and then think about what it means with a critical mind. So we'll go through some of that in a few slides. As far as the AI concepts, these are some of the things that you will hear about. I have them here mostly to dispel the mystery about some of the terms that you may hear. So, for example, you will hear things like vectors, and pretty much everybody knows about matrices. If you used Excel, you've been working with a matrix. A vector is just a series of numbers. And you will hear a lot of times the term vectorization or embeddings. That is basically what a vector is just a sequence of numbers. A tensor is a cube of numbers. Instead of having a matrix, which is two-dimensional, you have a tensor is a three-dimensional or higher collection of numbers. So these are sometimes mysterious words that are used by people, but it is just ways of representing information. No big magic there. You will also hear about things like GPUs and TPUs, and most recently the MPUs. This is the definition of what they are. Central processing units have been around for at least 70+ years. It was used on PCs and mainframes and so on. Data processing units are used to manage data that flows in high volumes. For example, in a network card within your PC or your laptop or mobile. When it comes to artificial intelligence, graphic processing units are one of the type of inventions or devices that were found to greatly accelerate the calculations that are needed for AI. So you will hear a lot about GPUs. If you invested in NVIDIA a couple of years ago, I'm sure you know about GPUs. You probably quadrupled or more your money. The neural processing units is a more recent type of computer. It is included, for example, in the latest laptop that was launched by Microsoft a couple of weeks ago. They include a neural processing unit. Apple is also including or starting to include some of those, and they are specifically designed to accelerate the calculations needed for training and inference in artificial intelligence. Tensor processing units and field programmable arrays and so on are just other type of computing power that is used for this. You may have seen this announcement a couple of months ago. The Blackwell platform is one of, and this is the CEO of NVIDIA, very popular person these days. They invented GPUs way back to accelerate games, the multiple layers that need to run on games. It turned out that the calculations needed for games were also very useful for artificial intelligence, because they're able to calculate matrices and advanced formulas very quickly. Another term that you may hear is embeddings or vectorization. Basically, like we said, vectors is just a sequence of numbers. An embedding is a vector, so it's a sequence of numbers that actually captures the essence of or the context of what a term or an image or a sound actually means. So if you have a cat, it has a certain position. It is close to a dog. but is far from a banana in a three-dimensional space. Now, you probably have used this type of analysis when you play charade. If you're able to, if I say I'm thinking of something, and you can ask me 5 questions to guess what it is. You're actually doing a 5-dimensional analysis when you're asking those 5 questions. Now, when we're talking about AI or generative AI in particular, the number of dimensions are much higher. The GPT-3, which was at least 3 years old, had 12,000 dimensions to position concepts and images and so on. 4, 4.0, and 5, they haven't been disclosed, but it's at least 10 times more in the case of GPT-4. So you're able to identify the context of things with a lot of detail. If you're thinking about a word or an image or a sound, they can all be positioned within the same area. So the word for cat and an image for cat would be very close in the multidimensional space that defines what this concept means. And that is a key part of how generative AI works, because it's able to understand what you're meaning to say, not necessarily caring about the actual words that you use or the actual pixels that are used for the image. There was a major change that happened in 2017. If you're able to read those 3 lines there, you have been diagnosed with hypoglycemia. It basically means, it's actually a fairly recent word. It just means that humans are able to read words as long as the first and the last letter in the word are correct. We don't necessarily care about the middle letters. So here we're able to read that attention enables models to prioritize important input data, enhancing accuracy and efficiency. That was the major discovery or the major advancement that was published in 2017 by a researcher in Google, a group of researchers that allowed the generative models to move extremely, with a lot more speed and efficiency and more accuracy. The equivalent of a human experience is when you go to a theater, there is a lot of things happening in the stage, but the spotlight is pointing to what is important. And that's how we humans manage to process the whole world. When you're driving, you're focusing on specific things. You're not focusing on everything within your peripheral vision. So that is human attention. The same thing happens with generative AI models. They focus on what is important, and they determine what is important using things like the context and the embeddings and so on. So that was really one of the reasons in 2017, just 7 years ago, that allowed these technologies to move so much faster than in the last 70 years. I'll keep this, I left this slide in case you want to review it later. I won't dwell too much on it, other than the fact that we used to always think of search as a, for example, the old Google search, the type of words Google brings back websites that have that word or parts of that word. When we're using artificial intelligence, we focus more on vector search, which is the search by context as opposed to the search by keywords. And then doing hybrids is actually a better way of doing it. The lower you go in this scale, the higher the compute requirements as well. So ideally, everybody would always use hybrid search, but that would be pretty expensive. Now, I'll get into some of the portions of the artificial intelligence field. And I think from the point of view of service providers, there are multiple ways that you need to approach artificial intelligence. One of them is, how will you use it in your own organization? Another is, how will you use it in your life? How will you be able to deal with your clients that are also already picking up a lot of these AI things, and how will that impact the relationship? So there is a lot of angles that you need to consider when you're looking at artificial intelligence. Now, in this case, and that's why I'm getting into some of these details, because you may end up discussing some of these topics as well. So it's good that we dispel any misconceptions. Artificial intelligence is a big field. It includes machine learning, which in turn includes deep learning, and generative AI, which is what ChatGPT is all about. That's the G in GPT. It's a way of implementing deep learning. So when we're talking about AI in the last couple of years, most people have been talking about generative AI, machine learning, and so on. That has been around for many years. And it has been in use for many years as well. So generative AI is where things have been changing quite fast. And this is again just for later review. If you follow this link, there is a podcast from The Economist that gets into a lot of detail about the way artificial intelligence was inspired by the human brain. Now, when we're talking about a generative AI, really, you'll hear the term LLM, large language model. Most recently, you will also hear the term SML, small language model for mobile devices and artifacts. But the main thing to remember with generative AI is that all it's doing is predicting the next word in a sequence. So based on what you may have said before, generative AI, let's say ChatGPT, will predict what will be the next sequence of words. So that is important to understand, because even though it sounds so intelligent, all it's doing is just guessing what the next word is. It's an informed guess because it has been trained with trillions of words, but that's really all it is. It's a probabilistic guess of what should come after what you said. And that's why you start always with a prompt. I think I left this one there because it is important when you're considering AI for your organization. And this one is there mostly because your clients will be in a number of these levels. So you may have clients that are users of artificial intelligence, and that will be at the top. Or you may have clients that are in development and so on. So there is a lot of room for people to fit in their careers. This is just a collection. All the logos are links, so you can follow those if you're interested in learning more about some of the alternative solutions, including Anthropic. Anthropic is not available in Canada yet, so if you click that one, you'll get it not found. This one too is just so you can see some of the things that can be done with generative AI. The links are there, and you can just follow the links as well. Now, AI in your life and in your career, and this applies personally as well as from an organization point of view. You pretty much have to realize that the world has changed, and it's going to continue changing. It's almost like an alien has landed, and we're trying to figure out that alien and what is, how can it help or not help. It is what is called a general purpose technology, so it will affect pretty much every aspect of our lives, the same way that the internet and lately mobile devices have done the same. And it will be a required skill for yourselves, for the clients that you serve as well, for pretty much anybody in the working world as well as normal life. So the main message is there is no reason to panic, but there is reason to act now. Things are changing very fast. Now,
Carlos, I just wanted to let you know we're at, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. These are some general principles of how to deal with AI. The first one is probably key. You have to distrust but verify. Normally, people say trust but verify. In the case of generative AI, you should distrust and but verify, because the hype has gotten a bit ahead of where we are. You also should be experimenting with it now to try to figure out when it helps, how it helps, or when it doesn't. You have to make sure you remain in the loop. If you start relying too much on AI independently, then you will talk yourself out of importance. You have to remain and be the human in the loop, and that actually uses AI as a part of your skills, not as a replacement of your skills. And at this point, you can treat it as an intern. It's eager and it's capable, but it's not always right. So you have to validate and double check what the AI will do. And the last line is important. The AI that we're using today is the worst that we will ever use. It's only going to get better. It's only going to improve. So when you're looking for things that you can do with it, think for really difficult things, because in 6 months there will be just normal things based on the upcoming models of AI. You should start implementing some of these low-hanging fruit or easy places to try AI in your organization. So you can start experimenting now, starting with internal processes, and there's a few of them listed there. So internal processes, you can deal with, you don't affect clients, you don't affect people. You can see how well it works or not, and then eventually start migrating towards positions that have interface with clients and externally directly dealing with clients as well. For the question of that always comes up, is my job safe? There is a way to analyze your job. We actually have created a custom GPT that you can access, is available to the public, where you can describe your job, and it will be it will tell you what the impact of AI might be. For example, I am a software developer. What will be the impact? And this GPT has been trained with documents from Wharton University, from the Conference Board of Canada, as well as some research that is public, but is fairly recent. It's from the last couple of months. So by using this GPT, you can analyze for yourself, and you can also analyze for your clients as well. The GPT will also give you information about which careers will be most negatively affected, most positively affected, and it will also give you recommendations for upskilling if you're in a career that might be negatively impacted, or that you need to do some retooling. So I think I have 13 seconds to go, so I'll leave the demos for after the. If it comes up in the Q&A, I can show you specifically those things.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Carlos. I appreciate how much of the historical and foundational information that we typically wouldn't have access to or think of looking into. So I appreciate that presentation. Thank you so much. So we'll move on. And Nadia, if you can launch the second poll. So as I mentioned to folks, this will be our second poll. And this one is specific to Aimee's presentation, which will be looking at Vera, the chatbot from ACCESS Employment, and its implementation. So hopefully you'll be able to see the poll shortly, and then we'll give it a minute. It's only a 1-question poll, and then we'll get into Aimee's presentation.
I've launched the poll. Can everyone see it?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thanks everyone for taking a minute to respond to the poll. All of these topics will be covered in my presentation, but knowing what's important to you helps you know where I should place some more emphasis.
A few more seconds and then we can end the poll, and Nadia, if you can share. Yeah, so if you can end the poll and then share the results, that would be wonderful.
Okay, so I'm sharing them now.
Thank you. Are folks able to see it? For some reason, it's not showing up on my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. So I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Nadia. So as I said, I'll pass it on to Aimee to give us some insights about Vera. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm just about to share my presentation. Okay, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the invitation. I work at ACCESS Employment, and our organization, I think, is one of the few in Canada that I'm aware of that is using AI already in a chatbot form. So I'm happy to be here today and share some of the experience that we've had using this technology. So just a little bit about ACCESS. We've been around for about 38 years. We operate in the Greater Toronto area. We've got 7 locations. We are a member of the Toronto South LIP as well as the other LIP quadrants in the city. And we've been a long-time member of those LIPs. Even I myself, in a former role, sat on the Toronto South LIP Council for a time. So I really appreciate the work of the LIPs to bring people together and share information in forums like this. ACCESS focuses on employment services for not only newcomers, but also other job seekers. However, the majority of the people that we serve are newcomers to Canada. We've got programs for women, youth, refugees, asylum claimants, individuals in receipt of Ontario Works, Ontario Disability Support Program, and whatnot. Our mission is to support people to move past barriers and secure meaningful employment, as well as to support hiring employers who are looking to meet their labor force needs. We've got over 30 programs, most of which are inland programs, but we also have a robust pre-arrival suite of services as well for individuals who are looking to either find employment or to start a business in Canada. So the challenge, which is our use case, what did we want to use AI for? Well, we really found that in about 2016 or so, the number of people that were reaching out to us for service had really increased. We had also increased the number of programs and services that we had available, and we were finding some bottlenecks at the initial point of contact with our organization. So people might be waiting, a little bit before somebody was able to get back to them. Also knowing that individuals were reaching out to us or wanting to reach out to us for information when they lived in other countries or in other time zones, or maybe they had a survival job and they weren't able to contact us between the hours of 9 and 5 when our offices were open. That was also a challenge for them. Then there's the time and the effort and even the cost that would be involved for somebody to visit one of our offices in person. So prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, if somebody wanted to initiate service with us, we always said, come into one of our locations, and that's how you start your service journey. So we were putting some burden, so to speak, on individuals in order to start their service journey in that way. Now we're able to offer that more virtually, but through our chatbot, we can offer that really on demand. And then finally, around staff time and effort, there were a lot of routine inquiries that staff were responding to about eligibility for the programs that they offer, or what does the program cover? What's the first step if you want to get involved in a particular program or learn how to register? What are our locations? What are our hours? You know, some information about resumes or interview tips, that kind of thing. So, you know, there were a lot of things that our staff were spending a lot of time in providing the same information again and again to people. And so they had developed templates, email templates, or other things that they were working on to make that a little bit faster. But again, they still had to be involved each time in relaying that information. So that helped us identify some of the challenges that we were facing and what our solution might be able to address. So through a global grant from Accenture, we were able to build a chatbot. We call her Vera, and she is embodied with a human-like avatar. And Vera is an acronym. It stands for Virtual Employment and Resource Attendant. And Vera can be found both on our website as well as within our Facebook Messenger app. So on Facebook Messenger, if somebody was to type in a response, there's actually a version of Vera that kicks in and provides information. And on our website, we've got a generic version of Vera on most of our website pages. And on each program's page, there is a custom version of Vera. And so this allows us to provide information, access to services, and calls to action for the person to take if they are interested in pursuing either services at ACCES in general or for a particular program. So what Vera offers is program information. So as I mentioned before, one of our primary goals was for Vera to be able to give people information about the programs and services that our organization offers. It also has information about job search topics in general. So as I mentioned before, resume, interview skills, social media for your job search, how to network, that kind of thing. It has some information about that, as well as settlement information. So when we first launched Vera, it did not have much settlement information. It had some frequently asked questions about childcare, language assessment, and credential assessment as well. So these external resources that ACCES doesn't offer, but we would refer out to, we had a little bit of information on those topics. And we've grown the information, the breadth of information that Vera has about settlement topics, and I'll get into how we did that in a moment. And Vera also offers the ability for people to self-register in upcoming events. So for us, if people are interested in programming, a typical first step for them would be to come to an information session for that program. So Vera is able to surface upcoming information sessions for particular programs and allow people to register in those information sessions and get a confirmation email right away. So the most popular topics on Vera are program information, program eligibility, event registration, so the things we've just covered, general information about what ACCES offers, and then how to contact somebody as well. So those would be things like, what are the directions to reaching one of your locations? How can I get there on public transit? What are your hours? That kind of thing. So as I mentioned, we got a grant from Accenture to be able to build Vera. And this process to take it from concept to launch was about 1.5 years. And we involved our staff from the get-go in figuring out, what should Vera do and what are the, the routine inquiries that you typically get, and could a chatbot fill some of those inquiries on your behalf. So we launched Vera in the fall of 2020 and had a public launch, so to speak, in early 2021. So we've had about 3.5 years now that our chatbot has been functioning. And so we've got a lot more insight now than we did when we first launched it about how are people using it? Would they even use it? How accurate is it? How much effort does it take us to maintain the chatbot? What internal resources and expertise are needed, as well as what do we need to, what are we still relying on an external vendor for to keep the chatbot going? And also more important, not more importantly, but just as important is the consistent dialogue that is required with our internal staff teams to understand the return on investment, the impact this chatbot is having, wanting to keep information about each program accurate on the chatbot insofar as possible, challenges they might have in fielding inquiries and training for staff as well. And we had an SDI project through IRCC that recently ended, and that also gave us the resources to be able to define our impact measurements for this tool. So this is the menu that somebody gets when they first interact with Vera. She's got a little bit of a welcome message, sort of explaining that she is a chatbot, and then what can I help you with? So this menu is sort of the launch pad to the rest of the conversation. Most people do use the menu items in their conversations. So the most commonly accessed menu item is programs and services. So people want to know what we have to offer. When they click on that, then they're given the option to find out what programs might be right for them, or they want to know about a specific program, because sometimes they've heard about a specific program through a friend or family member, and they're interested in knowing more about that program. And other times it's more general, the query. So if they say they want to find out which programs are right for them, then they're given a choice whether or not they'd like to fill out a form, which collects some information about their educational background, their language skills, their career goals, etc., and their name and contact information. When they submit that form, it gives them a list of the programs that they would be eligible for based on the information that they've provided, as well as it collects that information in the same database that all of our inquiries through more traditional channels come through as well. So staff go to the same place to find these queries. If they select, I want to learn about a specific program, same kind of thing, they're given a form. However, it's not as comprehensive because it's only going to ask for the questions that are relevant to the eligibility requirements for that particular program. And in the second case, it doesn't screen them in or out. If they're interested in that program, it's just collecting the information, and that query is routed directly to the program team so that they can follow up with that individual. And then it's also possible for individuals to get a list of information sessions for that particular program, and they can register for that info session. So they don't have to fill out this form with all of the information. They're able to still move ahead by providing some basic contact information, name, phone number, and email address, so that we can register them in a particular information session. And for some programs, their first step is an intake form or a program registration form. So in those cases, Vera would offer them the link to that form should they wish to follow it, fill it in. So all along the way, we're really trying to offer people as much choice as possible. And that helps keep it ethical as well, because people are in the driver's seat all the way along about what information they are opting to share. Another way that the conversation can flow is for people to type in their own message. So somebody might want to, how can I prepare for an interview? That might be their query. So at any point in time in the conversation, somebody can put their own message into this chat, and Vera will look to find the most accurate answer for that question from a bank of answers. So we do not use generative AI with this, where it might search, various places on the internet and try to come up with the best answer. The only answers that Vera can provide are ones that we have pre-composed. So you can see what the response would be for this particular question, gives you a little bit of information about interviewing and how to prepare. We developed an e-learning module that's kind of like a teaser 10-minute module. So it says, want to take a short online course to sort of test your knowledge and skills. This is where you would do that. But also we might have an upcoming workshop on that topic as well. Would you like to see a list of those upcoming workshops and register for that? So various options for people to take advantage and get information right away. So in Carlos's presentation, he talked about natural language processing as being one of the varieties of AI. And so this is what makes Vera AI. It has a natural language processor and it uses language models when somebody has put in a query in the box here, and it is trying to interpret that question and provide the right answer from, as I mentioned, one of the answers that we've got saved and ready to provide to people. So when we first designed the chatbot and we came up with our staff in consultation about 150 different responses, we had to come up with at least 5 different ways of asking for each of those responses. This is how we started to train the chatbot to be able to identify the correct response. And we had to, if there were 2 responses that have to do with interviews, for example, we had to be quite specific in our examples to say that this question's asking for this response, whereas this question's asking for the other response. And we also have resource surfacing as well within the technology. So that means that depending on the query that somebody might put in there, Vera is able to look at different websites, and we choose the websites that she can refer to. And as Carlos was mentioning around, a vector search that would allow you to, or would allow Vera to find relevant passages that in other websites that would be relevant to that query, she can pull up as well. And so it's kind of like a Google search, except we put guardrails on the websites that can be surfaced through that search. So we point to IRCC's website, we point to our own website, of course, and I think there's another one, but I can't remember what it is right now. All right. The other thing that Vera is, people might come to Vera for, or that Vera helps with, is information. So we talked a bit, in our last example about like somebody's interested in getting more skills about interviewing or job search tips, that kind of thing. So we've got a wealth of resources on our website on these topics anyways. So this is just a way to support somebody to get access to that existing content, be it video, YouTube, an article, a quiz, etc. So here we've got some sample FAQs that people might want to, topics that we find are popular and people might want to find out more about, but they can also put in their own query at any time. And then for the settlement resources, earlier in my presentation, I mentioned that we started with relatively a small number of responses about settlement, and that's really because ACCES that's not our area of expertise. We're really focused on employment. But through the IRCC project that we recently had, we engaged 2 organizations, ACCES, the Ontario Council of Agencies Serving Immigrants, and Catholic Cross-Cultural Services, to help us broaden the information that we have on settlement-related topics. So again, here's a sample, we offer users a sample of, topics they might be interested in, and then they can either choose one of those or put their query into the box. So we've increased the number of conversations that include settlement information has increased by 800%. Since we added those additional resources. And in those settlement responses, we may have links off to other organizations like settlement.org or 211, IRCC's website. And we're able to, through our partnership with ACCES, we were able to measure the inbound traffic to settlement.org from the chatbot. And it was almost a third of people that were, that took the advice, that, saw the link to settlement.org and went over there to get more information. So we were really impressed with with that result. It's a very high referral rate, especially from a chatbot. And with our own e-learning modules that we created, it was the same. It was about a third of people ended up clicking on those e-learning modules and beginning their learning journey. So that showed us that people are, that we've accurately understood their need because they're interested in the information, but that they're also trusting the information that the chatbot provides and taking that next step.
Aimee, I just wanted to let you know we're at 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So we also have information for employers on here because they're another stakeholder that might want to begin finding out more about what ACCES can offer to them. So we've got options for them. We also have options for current clients who might be interested in another program, or they might want to participate in an event, as well as alumni. Okay, so getting into impact. So in the last fiscal year, there were over 38,000 conversations on the chatbot. In fact, that's 90% of the number of conversations that we had in general, but we can't tell if people have come back to talk to the chatbot again. So we always report 90% because some people, you know, we allow for 10% of people to who may be return users, and we're just not aware. So that's a huge number. In fact, from when, you know, our first full year in 2021 to 2023, it's a 91% increase. So that means that the number of average conversations per month has nearly doubled from 2 years ago. So that, you know, again, that's a real clear indicator to us that this is filling a need that people had to access information on demand. We did an external evaluation as part of our SDI project, and we found that the satisfaction rate was over 85% in a focus group and a survey of people that that we interviewed, as well as we have built into the chatbot a question that comes up at the end of certain calls to actions, filling out a form or registering for an event to say, how helpful have I been today? And that was 91%. People said that Vera was either helpful or very helpful. So, you know, it says to us that we're hitting the mark in terms of their expectations being met, and that it's efficient and effective. So looking at the number of conversations, event registrations, frequently asked questions that have been answered, we are able to calculate this as you know, a time savings for staff. This is time that staff did not have to spend doing those tasks. And in 2023 alone, it was over 11,000 staff hours. So this is a really significant benefit to our organization that we have this in place, because, you know, we haven't reduced staff as a result of this. We're just able to serve more people with the same staffing levels, as well as we've been able to offset the time that our staff would have spent on these types of routine administrative type tasks to more complex tasks, and being able to focus on more interaction with our clients that are in our programs. 10% of all of our clients start their journey with Vera. So when we look at, you know, the number of clients we served over the past few years, and then we see, okay, how many of those, their first point of contact with the organization was through the chatbot, it's 10%. So we're really pleased with that. And also the conversion rate. So yes, you've had a conversation on the chatbot. Yes, you've, you know, registered for an event, but what happens next? And 20% of those individuals end up becoming our clients. So that would be, they've met with a staff person, they've had their needs assessed, and they may have, or they're already going into programming. So I know I don't have much time, so I will zip through this, but I wanted to go through 2 best practices. If you're thinking about implementing this kind of technology, what we found: engage staff from the get-go. Because as Carlos mentioned, one of the, you know, the real questions, and it's a valuable one, is what does this mean for my job? So we wanted to build a chatbot that would complement what staff do. It would mimic the types of, you know, routine inquiries that they're already responding to, and deliver that information in the voice of staff as well, meaning like it's a tone that's conversational. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we engage our staff all the time in like asking them, so how are the queries coming in? Is it hard for your team to manage? Is there anything that we can do to make this any easier for you? What's our return time for getting back to people and whatnot? And evolving the chatbot in conversation with staff. We have to choose technology wisely as well. And so Carlos had mentioned a number of different companies that offer this type of these tools. So for us, we wanted something that would be flexible because we wanted people to be able to follow the menu options, but also put information in their own words. Again, this helps keep it accessible and supports individuals who maybe their reading skills aren't as good as their writing skills or whatever. So this allows them to engage with the technology in the way that works best for them. And we would have flexibility in how we designed those conversations as well to lead people towards calls to action. Integrating with our database was a critical consideration. There's, Vera surfaces those information sessions and events from our database, our Salesforce-based database. And as people register through Vera, it captures that information in our Salesforce database as well, and allows us to track if Vera was the first point of contact and how many conversations we're having and all that. We also wanted reputable and reliable technology. We've chosen to go with IBM, Watson Assistant, and Watson Discovery. And then also the cost to build and maintain it on an ongoing basis. So I know a lot of you said this is my last slide, but a lot of you said in the poll that this is, what you were most interested in about the required resources. So we've got a subscription to the Watson Assistant and Discovery technology that is usage-based. So as the number of conversations has gone up, so has the cost by about 50% for this particular subscription from a few years ago till now. We have some internal expertise, people that managed that SDI project that I mentioned earlier, individuals who are experts in our Salesforce-based database and can make changes on that side to be able to route queries or adjust eligibility criteria that Vera cross-references against or whatever. And then we also rely on an external vendor as well to execute more complicated changes. So internally, we can handle things like editing a response or adding a new response, but we use a vendor when we want to adjust the flow of the conversation or surface different types of resources. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we did get a global grant from Accenture to bring Vera from idea to launch, and that grant was significant at $1.1 million. So that, that is something that I think is important for people to know about, that initial investment that is required. But now that it's a mature tool, it's able to be maintained at a much lower annual rate than that. We had an SDI project through IRCC that recently ended, and we're also now building in the costs of Vera and the internal staff to run Vera into program budgets as well. So a portion of those costs would be allocated to different programs because they all benefit from it as a source of lead generation. Okay, I'm sorry, I think I went over. I'll stop now.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Aimee. It's so interesting to see the impact in service delivery, that especially the time that was saved. I think in the sector and in nonprofit as a whole, we know how valuable our time is. So to be able to see something that can take care of that admin aspect of it is very interesting. So thank you so much for that presentation and all of that information. So now we are at the Q&A portion of our session today. So like we said, we've left, we cut it a little shorter, but that's okay. Hopefully folks have some questions for our presenters. I don't see any questions in the chat or in the Q&A box, but if you'd like, you're free to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you have. please go ahead.
Okay. Sometimes when we see clients, we see the frustration when they are trying to connect and talk to a person when requesting services. They come to us and so like things like, yeah, I tried, but it was just a machine trying to provide information, and I just quit it. So do you have any data about clients like starting the process of asking questions and leaving like halfway through without getting the answers?
Abandoning the conversation early, right? No, we can tell that the average number of inputs from the user is about 3.5. But we're not sure if that means that it only took that long for them to get the information or the answer they wanted and they're satisfied, or if they've abandoned that conversation. However, we can see in our own, database that thousands of people complete the action. So fill out that registration form or the program interest form. So, I think people have the choice as well to, say, forget it. I'm going to call them now or something if it's during the office hours or whatever. So I'm sure that must happen. And when we did as part of our external evaluation, we asked people that opted not to use the chatbot, well, why didn't you use it? And a lot of them said, 3/4 of the users said, I had so many questions, I didn't think that a chatbot would be able to handle that kind of complexity. So that's why they didn't even, take that avenue. But I think the important thing is that they have choice.
Okay, one more. And what's the average or the percentage of clients getting in contact with a real person after interaction with Vera?
Yeah, if they have filled out a program interest form, it should be 100%.
Good.
That's
Thank
our service goal. Yeah. Thanks for the questions, Angelica.
Thank you. So we have a question in the chat, and it's for you, Aimee. What was the driver to go with IBM?
Thanks, Lino, for the question. Yeah, as I mentioned, it hit all the notes for the technology choices that we had. It was reliable. The cost for the subscription itself was, wasn't outlandish or something that we couldn't afford. It integrates with our Salesforce-based database, and it offered us flexibility in being able to design the dialogue as well as over time make changes to that. I hope I answered your question. We're really happy with our choice as well. Great.
Thank you for answering that. I don't see any other hands up and any questions in the chat. So I myself have a question. So the question is to both Carlos and Aimee, or. How can organizations foster trust and transparency with clients when introducing AI into service delivery? Whichever one wants to answer first. Carlos, do you want to take that on, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think, and by clients, we mean the immigrants that organizations are trying to assist. I would say it is important that you keep the option to talk to a human at all times, to not make them think that you are just diverting them to a lower cost type of operation. So always be able to escalate. Now I think people get frustrated when they get talking to a chatbot or even a voice assistant when you just feel like you're stuck in there. Like what you're really trying to ask is not being answered, or a lot of people have very special circumstances, so that is probably the best way to retain the trust of people. I think a lot of the users of the systems would be, if they are professionals, they are already aware of AI and chatbots and some of the limitations and so on. So I think people will be understanding, but at the same time, they don't want to feel like they were just thrown off course to just get them out of the way. But they're not just a metric that they're being dealt with, like it happens sometimes with call centers.
I agree with everything that Carlos said. If somebody puts a query into Vera that she doesn't understand, she asks them, could you rephrase that? And if she still doesn't get it, the next step is, would you like to speak with somebody? Let me take down your information and we'll get back in touch with you. And actually, one of the things that came up in the external evaluation is a suggestion that in situations like that, if it was during office hours that this conversation took place, there would be sort of, a notification to a staff member who would be able to follow up, within the hour or something with that individual. So there's, a more continuity of that conversation that started. And we did find, interestingly enough, that about 53% of people are using the chatbot when we're open. I actually thought it would be skewed more to outside of office hours, but it wasn't. So I thought that was interesting. But other ways to build trust with the actual user itself is, when you begin that chatbot conversation, and I do this when, if I'm on somebody's website and a chatbot pops up, it's like, how relevant is the information that, or the options that you're providing me? Am I seeing what my need is reflected here? And can I pick something? And then what's the performance like? Is the information that I'm receiving back kind of what I expected, or is what I'm looking for? And then on the staff side, that staff time savings is a really important trust building metric. Do staff feel like, oh, well, now that we have the chatbot in place, I'm spending less time doing XYZ and I can focus on other things, as well as, are these good leads for my program? And so one of the, I mentioned earlier about that dialogue with our program teams. So through Vera, when it first launched, it didn't matter where you were located in the world or in the country or in the province to be able to register for a program's information session. And our programs told us, well, we think it would be better if somebody's located outside of Canada and they're not approved for pre-arrival, maybe they're thinking about immigrating to Canada or whatnot. It's actually better for them to know sooner that they're not going to be able to avail this particular inland program that is designed for people who are already in Canada and have certain immigration statuses. So could we kind of cut them off at the pass a bit sooner in a nice way, but sort of set up the expectations for that person earlier on, as well as, save staff time later on from needing to then explain that in the information session once I've already got kind of further down the road. So that's the kind of thing that, we've modified as a result of that feedback.
Great. Thanks so much to both of you for answering that question. I see, Angelica, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yes. My question now is about privacy, confidentiality, and consent. So for Carlos, for example, so Copilot, I think, is the name of the from Microsoft. So how they handle the information, or the information we collect in order to generate a project report, for example. So my concern is that the company gets all the data from our clients and then use it later on. The same as ACCES, how a client can trust that the information is not going to be shared afterwards.
Okay, and I think that applies to everything, not just Copilot, but in the case of, if you're asking specifically about Copilot, there are multiple versions of Copilot. There is the free versions that people can use, the same way as the free ChatGPT. And then there are the paid versions that have commitments from the providers. that they will not be using the information to train their own models or to sell them to somebody else. In fact, that's one reason why I prefer Microsoft as opposed to Google, for example, because Google's main business is really to sell information for advertisement. So they say they wouldn't do it if you have the paid versions, but I guess I'm not a trusting soul. Now, in the case of ChatGPT, for example, if you have to have at least the team edition. If you have the free or the plus, then they don't make any commitments that they won't be using your information. If you use the team edition or the enterprise, the higher up, those have the commitments from the from Microsoft in that case, and from OpenAI as well, that they will not be using that information. If you use Microsoft Copilot Studio, for example, which is another tool that is a paid tool, there is also the same commitments. If you use the APIs, in all cases, the commitments are there. Now, these are just, again, I'm not a trusting soul, so the fact that they say we promise we won't make it available to people, they may not make it available willingly. Sometimes organizations get hacked, and you have all the promises in the world, and they get hacked, and it's like, gee, sorry. I mean, that happened to hotel chains, happened to MasterCard, happened to the CRA. So I think you always have to be careful with what you share and who you share it with. But we are in an era when everything is connected. So even with the with all the guarantees in writing, it still doesn't fully protect you.
And from ACCES, the next part of the question, how we guarantee that the client accessing like Vera can be sure that the information is not shared or used in any way.
Trying to unmute Aimee.
Yeah, that's what it looks
Sorry,
like.
sorry about that. I have two monitors and I just couldn't find the mouse, so it was nowhere to be found. Anyways, thank you for the question. I do think this is important, and I think I actually missed it on one of my slides as to why we chose this particular technology that we did, is because when the information is inputted into the Watson Assistant chatbot, that technology is considered stateless, which means that it doesn't retain that information. It's just a throughput. So the information is stored on our Salesforce-based database and isn't retained by IBM itself. So that's one of the, the important considerations for us, is that, we're not having storage of this information anywhere else other than with our own database. We also don't ask for sensitive information through the chatbot, and I think that's really important. I mean, think about the purpose of the chatbot, or whatever the technology is, and collect the minimum amount of information necessary in order to fulfill the task or solve that problem. So in our case, it's really a conversation starter. We want to collect their name and contact information so that we can follow up with them, or help them register in an event. But we don't need at that point to know what their PR number is, what their date of birth is, their address, or any of that level of personal identifiable information. That can all come later, once the person is further along their service journey, and also a level of trust has been built up with the organization to know that it's legit. And at that point, that's where we have a consent form and everything that explains to them how we're going to safely store their information, and under which circumstances would we be sharing it.
Thank you. Hopefully that answered your questions, Angelica. Okay, let's see. There are no new questions in the, oh, Citali, please go ahead.
Sorry, I was trying to find this raise hand. I just wanted to, but because the concepts might still feel a little high level, and I would ask for both presenters to tell us where we can start. If this is our first approach, where we can start that you would suggest that will help us with a learning path that really gets us to where we want to, and with your understanding of what you presented today and what the audience is, where will you send us to follow? Thank you.
Okay, I'll go first if Aimee is shy. Yes, it was in one of the slides that I had. From a business point of view, I presume is the question. From a personal point of view, of course, you should be experimenting, but carefully. From a business point of view, there are a number of things that could be implemented if you're not totally sure of the technology and so on. Ideally, things that are just internal. So internal processes that are low stakes, and typical things for that will be anything you find in your intranet. So if you have, for example, policies and procedures documents, human resources plans, your benefits plans, and so on, that is very easy to implement in a chatbot internally. So people they don't have to read the manuals, they don't have to read the books, they can ask the questions, and then the chatbots will answer with the proper questions. The proper answers, and it is something that will not hurt anybody. Something for onboarding is an ideal way as well. When a new employee starts, it's always a bit of a confusing time for the new employee and for the organization. So having an onboarding body, like a chatbot that is basically your orientation, your guide to the organization, any questions that the new hire may have, that's another thing that could be implemented fairly quickly with information that is already available in the organization, and it doesn't hurt anybody. And then once you see some of the challenges and advantages, and a lot of the question is not so much the technology, but the processes and the people. And I saw the slides from Aimee, and that is for sure. Before you actually turn on the computer, you have to figure out what will people who are the users, what are they interested in, what are the paths that they why did they come, and what are they looking for, and then try to help them along the way. So trying to do that, trying to implement AI before you have figured out what for is not a good way to go around it. But if you want to start playing with it, those internal processes are low stakes. The information is there. Having access to the data and dealing with silos would be probably one of the biggest issues in a real implementation. And then so might as well go start using it, start playing with it, implementing, but go slowly.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say too. Know what the problem you're trying to solve first before you delve into it. And there are different options for technology, so some more expensive than others. So for example, a chatbot that only offers menu options and doesn't need the natural language processing, because you're not giving people the opportunity to enter unique, spontaneous queries, is cheaper for sure. I feel a little, it's funny because you're mentioning, Carlos, all the great internal purposes. And I think we kind of started from the opposite. We're like, let's go external. And now I'm thinking of all the great applications that a chatbot like this could serve for internal processes as well. And I also think you should talk to your staff too, because they may be using some tools already or have ideas for how this technology could be leveraged to benefit the organization.
Thank you so much to both of you. Those are both wonderful and informative responses to what is still very much the beginning stages, or as I said at the beginning of this session, we're all still very much at the early stages of it and how we can better understand AI before we start using it to support newcomers in the sector. So we are at time. It's 2:30, so just on time, which is wonderful. Once again, I want to thank you both, Carlos and Aimee, for such insightful presentations. I hope that folks were able to kind of dip their feet into what AI is in this somewhat overwhelming world of AI, but hopefully it gave you some foundational knowledge. Carlos had mentioned that he'll be providing the presentation, and Aimee, if you're providing your presentation as well, I will share it with those that registered. It will also have the recording on TSLIP's YouTube page, so you can go back and revisit it. And the working group is also the employment working group is also working on a AI resource repository. So a centralized place that will have all of this information. So keep an eye out for that. But with that, I say thank you, and I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.